You nervously got up from your desk, the banging on your door startling you out of your chair. He was really here. All of your classmates at one point or another tried to reach out to you, blowing up your phone with concerned text messages, but none of them ever tried to come up to your room. Leave it to Bakugo to break the mold. The last time you talked to any of them was during the game, and they all felt terrible after what happened. Although you knew their sincerity was genuine, you just couldn't talk to anyone yet. You needed a moment to gather your thoughts. Bakugo had also attempted to reach you, as he had plans for you, but you simply texted him that you needed to study. There was no way you could face him. You had these feelings for Bakugo for such a long time. You couldn't believe you had just blurted them out like that. And you both studying together only made you guys closer despite being relatively strangers beforehand. Since your freshman days at UA, you always admired him from afar. But with you all now being third years, you were fully prepared to let your feelings wither away. Who knew that things would change so drastically in just a few short months? You couldn't help but think about the phone call you just had with him, essentially confirming the feelings he also had for you, the words constantly repeating in your head. To say you were happy was an understatement. You were elated, excited even, and yet you felt nervous. You didn't know what next steps to take. And then there was also the matter of the biting incident. But now he was waiting at your door. Time was no longer something you had. Sensing your stalling, Bakugo decided to prompt you with a little more motivation. You jumped once a loud bang was at your door.
You've got exactly 5 seconds.
You could hear some crackling on the other side, letting you know that it was best to heed his warning, lest you have to clean up the remains of a door blown to pieces, along with no further protection from a pissed-off Bakugo. Although you knew he would never harm you, he was also very creative. It especially worried you when it was someone he was mad at, so it was better not to provoke him. You frantically ran up to the door, shuffling to unlock it as quickly as possible. As soon as you opened it, you felt him force the door all the way open with his hand, pushing his way through, practically bumping into you in the process. You jumped back slightly, surprised by his sudden abruptness.
Why go through all the trouble to lock yourself away?
I just wanted to be left alone to think. He glared at you, walking to you slowly.
You've had more than enough time.
He saw you move back, but quickly grabbed you by your waist, getting a squeak from you as he nonchalantly pulled you into the air, slamming the door behind him with his foot. He looked up at your surprised expression, your hands pressing into his shoulders as you nervously held on to him. You could feel as his toned forearms only pressed harder into your back as he walked away from the door, carrying you effortlessly.
You aren't going anywhere.
He plopped you down onto the bed, climbing over top of you and holding your wrist down to the mattress. His eyes bore into you, not of anger, but of determination, as you laid there, breathless by his actions. What are you doing?
Making sure you can't run away this time.
Your eyes looked away from his, just so they could linger on the white bandage covering the corner of his lip, the guilt suddenly washing over you. I'm so sorry, Bakugo. He followed your eyes, realizing what you were staring at, tightening his grip on your wrist.
Would you stop worrying about that already?
I can't help it. I can't believe I hurt you like that. And right after I said all that stuff, too. I must have the worst luck ever.
Is that what you think?
He leaned into you, your faces now inches apart as he looked into your now distressed eyes.
Being with you like that felt pretty lucky to me.
Your eyes lit up before suddenly being completely flustered. You squirmed underneath him, desperately wanting to cover up your face from his view, but he still held your hands down to the mattress, and with him being on top of you, that was only making it worse. He smirked at your predicament, leaning up and getting a good look at you as you squirmed around under his grip, the bright hue of blush sheepishly lighting up your cheeks. your uncertain yet bright eyes trying to look anywhere but him, your vain attempts to try to free your hands just for a small relief from the situation. He could admit that seeing you like this was almost too cute. It only made him want to tease you more. He leaned down next to your ear, freeing one of your hands so that he could hold your head close to his lips.
You know, I could have kissed you way more if you had stuck around. Maybe I'll make up for that now.
He smirked as he nibbled the lobe of your ear. Your eyes widened, small tears pricking at your eyes for the level of heat and embarrassment rising to your face. With your now free hand, you grabbed a pillow from behind you, slamming it into his face. "Stop making fun of me!" you cried out. You knew he was playing around with you, even if he meant those words. And although you probably deserved this, you just couldn't handle his teasing. He grabbed the pillow, slowly pulling it down from his face, a sinister grin slowly coming into view.
Oh, that's how you want to play?
He growled, taking said pillow and whapping you over the head with it, getting a surprised yelp from you. He released your other hand and scooted to the end of the bed as you got up, viciously grabbing the other pillow behind you. He held his pillow to the side, cocking it as if it were a shotgun, playfully challenging you. You smirked, raising your pillow over your head as you laughed. "Oh, you are so dead!" You had no idea how long you both had been laying on the floor, your bodies outstretched towards one another, as you both laid sprawled out in the middle of the room, breathless. Your room became a pillowy war zone as feathers and fluff floated all around you.
Admit it, I won.
He breathed. In your dreams, maybe. I beat you. Or did you forget that pillow shot to the face? You stated, referring to the time when you literally climbed over your desk and clocked him with a pillow before he could stop you, just to then shortly after fall flat on your face.
Yeah, right. I clobbered you way before that.
You both laid there catching your breath. You looked over to see a feather somehow laying perfectly on the crook of his nose, his haggard breaths somehow ignoring it. He was too tired to acknowledge it was there. It was actually kind of cute. You leaned over to him slightly, catching his attention. You were mere inches from his face, a light gust of wind hitting his skin as you blew the feather off his nose. You absent-mindedly watched as it floated away, not realizing how he inched even closer to you. Your breathing stilled, your heart pounding in your chest, the sound of which ringing in your ears once you felt soft lips pressing to your cheek. It was so warm and comfortable. The feel of his kiss lingering and tickling on your skin once he pulled away. He grinned as he reached up to your head, dusting away all the feathers that got caught in your hair. You couldn't help but smile yourself, overjoyed by seeing him so carefree and the overall feeling you got from just being around him. He stood up suddenly, extending a hand out to you. You took it as he pulled you up with him. You watched as he reached into his back pocket, never once letting go, as he pulled out a small square piece of paper, placing it in your hand. You looked at it to see it was a train ticket with a preset destination on it.
So, will you meet me here tomorrow?
He asked, holding on to your hand tighter. Of course. I'll be there. You smiled. He nodded as he hesitantly let go of your hand, walking to the door.
I've got some last-minute stuff to do. I'll meet you there at 9 a.m. If you're late, I'll hunt you down.
I won't. I promise. He nodded once more and proceeded out the door. You followed him in order to close the door behind him. As he walked out into the hallway, he abruptly turned back to you. Reaching his hand out, he placed it behind your head, pulling you in as he leaned forward, your foreheads touching gently. He nuzzled you softly, caressing the back of your head and playing with the strands of hair, your eyes never once looking away from each other.
Good night,
he muttered. Without another word, he turned and walked off. You absent-mindedly closed the door behind you as you slid down its frame. Your hand reached up to your forehead before it then trailed down to your cheek again, and you smiled. Bakugo wasn't known for his affection, but even if he never said it, he always had a way to show you it was there. The next day, you made it to the train station. You had luckily picked out your outfit that evening and got dressed relatively quickly. You didn't know where he was taking you, so you decided for something cute yet casual. A simple red dress with ruffles around the hem and the collar, and some wedges with a small heel so it wouldn't hurt your feet all day. You had unfortunately missed the first train, but yet made it to the station in enough time that you could take the second and still be on time. The second train arrived and all the passengers boarded, you being lucky enough to get a seat by the door. You were so excited to see him. You hoped that your outfit wasn't too much. You wondered if he was already there waiting for you, and what his attire might look like. You both had never hung out outside of school, unless it was a field trip or an internship, and even still, those were both for school, so you didn't really get a chance to do anything together. This would be perfect. You could finally start to make up for what happened. You knew you had a lot of work to do with the way you handled things, but this would be a good start. You were shaken from your thoughts as you jolted forward, the train suddenly slowing to a stop. The crowd all audibly surprised and holding on to anything solid. The static from the speakers came through overhead as a voice filled the train. Good afternoon, all passengers. Due to a recent villain attack in the railways, there will be a delay indefinitely until further notice. Heroes have been called to the scene. We will get you to your destination as soon as possible. We apologize for this inconvenience. It was almost unnerving how casually they talked about a current ongoing villain attack. Your heart pounded in your chest, both worried about the people's safety, but as selfish as it was, you couldn't help but to worry about being late to see Bakugo. You cursed as you attempted to call him about the delay, but you had no signal. He would probably understand, but it still bothered you. You had already stood him up once, something that you deeply regretted, and you wanted to make up for. You couldn't do this to him again. You heard screams over in the nearby car, looking over to see a suspicious character in the middle of the runway. This couldn't be good. There was only one other train in front of yours. You found in your research that most villains would find no reason to attack unless it was either an act of tyranny or a robbery. You hadn't heard any loud commotion since stopping here, so you assumed it was the latter. It's possible that this was a group heist and one of the villains snuck away and made his way over to this train. You got up, running over to the exit of the car and slouching down so that no one could see you approaching. You slid out and huddled by the door of the neighboring car. You listened in, hearing the cries for help inside. You peered in, seeing as the villain held out a bag to the passengers, demanding any valuables, quickly confirming your suspicions. You hurriedly threw off your shoes and climbed to the top of the car, silently walking over to the middle where there was a hatch. You could hear the male in question yelling, threatening the people inside, and you knew you had to be swift. You lifted up the hatch, and before he could realize where the sound was coming from, swung inside, still hanging on to the opening, kicking him with both feet and knocking him down. You flipped down to the floor of the car, and he growled, rising back to his feet. He was a villain you had never seen before. You extensively researched different villains in the country, so you knew a lot of them. The fact that you didn't recognize him let you know that he was a lower-end villain with no affiliations. This was both good and bad, as you had a good chance of taking him down, but it also meant that you had no idea what his abilities were, so you had to tread carefully.
You little brat! Get out of my way!
He pointed towards you, his thumb and middle finger touching in a flicking motion. You waited for a few moments to see what he would do, before something flew past your face, cutting it slightly. You looked closely at the wall behind you to see a fingernail was pointing out of the wall. You wiped away the blood on your cheek. They weren't immensely powerful, but they would do considerable damage. You weren't so much worried about yourself as you were about the passengers. You wouldn't allow any of them to get hurt, no matter what that meant for you. He pointed his fingers at you once more. Before you could realize it in time, he pointed his hand toward the civilians to your right, as he changed his trajectory at the last moment. You instinctively moved over to them as they huddled in their seat, shielding themselves in fear. He flicked his finger several times, and you stood in front of them, covering your face with your arms, taking the brunt of the hit, slicing through your dress and skin, leaving several small cuts. They stung quite a bit, but this was nothing you couldn't handle. As he pointed his fingers to more people ready to fire, you quickly stepped into action, raising a wall of water in front of the people he fired at, the nails being stopped in their tracks. His eyes widened before looking at you, your eyes now glowing a bright blue color.
So this is their quirk. But how was it that the nails didn't make it through? It's only water,
he thought. Your quirk was water manipulation. You could control and manifest water from anywhere. This also included the properties of water that you can control and alter, such as the density, pressure, and temperature. As he was lost in thought, you quickly stormed him, water forming into whips at your sides as you slashed forward. He jumped back, recoiling from the water cutting through his skin before firing several rounds at you. He placed another wall of water in front of you, catching the nails before they ever got close. This would go on forever if you didn't find a way to incapacitate him. You thought of a way how, but it wasn't a preferred method. The safety and concern of the passengers, however, made it necessary. Several more rounds came your way, cutting up your leg as you were lost in thought. You raised your hand in front of you, a small ball of water surrounding his 2 fingers. You closed your hand into a fist and heard the snap of his bones. He cried out as he grasped onto his hand in pain. You had adjusted the water you placed around his fingers, altering the pressure to break his fingers. With his thumb now incapacitated, he could no longer fire with his other fingers, and he was in too much pain to try to use the other hand. You quickly jumped onto his back, holding his arms behind him and keeping a hand pointed to his face to make another attack should he try to escape. "Someone contact the conductor! Let them know the villain has been apprehended," you stated. A couple of people nodding, running up to the front of the car, while several people came up to you, thanking you for your efforts, and some even offering gifts. It felt good to know that you helped keep everyone safe. It was the first time that you had to handle a situation like this firsthand. You couldn't help but mentally thank Bakugo for his relentless teachings. Had he not committed so much time to studying with you, you may not have known what all to do in this situation. But overall, it went well, and best of all, no casualties. After some time, the train started again and made its way to its next stop so the passengers could finally head home. The heroes arrived at the scene, along with the local news crew, taking statements and testimony from the subway patrons. All of them having nothing but positive things to say about your heroic deeds. Once the heroes got a final statement from you, they thanked you considerably. They hadn't noticed that one had slipped away, as they were also heroes in training, responding to the nearby call with the backup of one pro hero to ensure safety. It was a good thing you had your hero's license, otherwise this could have been a completely different conversation. But you were happy that the situation was finally handled, and the villain who was there, attempting to rob the subway, was quickly sent away, but not before returning every last valuable he stole. You climbed the stairs of the subway station, still barefoot, as you somehow lost your shoes in all the commotion. But you figured it was better to make it to Bakugo first and explain. Taking a look at the clock, it was 10 past noon. It took you over 3 hours to take down that villain and wrap up with the heroes. You face-palmed. You just couldn't catch a break. Of all the days for this to happen. You quickly started running, making your way to the designated meet spot, which luckily for you was near the station. You fumbled around for your phone to attempt to call Bakugo once more, but your phone was already blowing up with messages. Surprisingly not from Bakugo, but from Mina. You clicked on them, seeing she sent you numerous news links and a video. You clicked on it, seeing that it was you, and the villain you just apprehended just a few moments ago. What the? In that moment, your phone went off, the sudden ringing surprising you as you almost dropped it. You hadn't talked to Mina, or really anyone for that matter, after the whole incident. But in this case, you could make an exception. You quickly accepted the call.
Oh my gosh, did you see?
Mina squealed. Yeah, I saw. How did you get that?
Are you kidding? You went viral! Someone on the subway recorded you, and everyone's talking about it!
You can't be serious.
All the news stations are talking about the dressed-up UA student who heroically protected and saved a whole train.
Wow, this is so crazy. You honestly didn't know how to feel about this attention. Happy? Embarrassed? Both? You were a mixed bag of emotions at this point.
But hey, I didn't mean to distract you. I know you're on a date with Bakugo. It was just so exciting I had to share it.
You knew about that?
Yeah, he told us. Wanted us to help with ideas of places to take you. He shot them all down though. Said they weren't good enough for you.
She sighed as you could only look down, feeling worse than before, something you hadn't thought possible. I hope he still feels that way after this. Taking down that villain took a while. I haven't even seen him yet.
Don't worry. He's thick-headed, but he's not dumb. He'll understand why you're late. And plus, it's you. He's bound to forgive you. Also,
She paused.
I hope you'll forgive me too. I didn't mean for our game to upset you. You guys were just so cute. I wanted to help.
You smiled, hearing her sincerity. Honestly, Mina, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here now. I owe you one, so no need to apologize. You could hear her sigh in relief over the phone.
Now go find that stubborn mule and enjoy your date.
She hung up the phone, unbeknownst to her that you had already found him. You saw him standing underneath a large sakura tree, the wind blowing the petals in through his hair. You were awestruck, seeing his attire. He looked even cooler than he normally did. The slightly open button-down with the dark pants and shoes just made him look so cool. The sunglasses in his hair were also a nice touch. He looked up from his phone, seeing you standing there mere meters away from him. You were sure you were quite a sight, with your dress now ruined, being torn to shreds, no shoes, and your arms and legs all cut up. He pushed himself off of the trunk of the tree, stuffing his phone away in his pocket, and strolled up to you. Was he angry? Upset? Ready to lash out? You couldn't tell. You knew you were already on thin ice with him, and to do this to him, despite the situation, felt inexcusable. You would completely understand if he refused to forgive you, but you still wanted to try, and you figured starting with an apology couldn't hurt. Bakugo, I'm so sorry. You stopped. Your body stilled and unwavering as you felt two arms wrap around you, tightly and protectively.
You okay?
He asked, caressing the back of your head. Once the shock of his sudden embrace wore off, you sighed, your tension quickly being replaced with relief as you wrapped your arms around him. Yes, I'm okay. He nodded, holding you tighter. You saw the video too? He nodded once again. You held on to him tighter, your body relaxing into him.
I looked all over for you. But then I saw your video and waited for you here.
I'm really sorry I'm late.
I asked you for one damn thing and you still couldn't make it here on time.
He joked. I'm sorry. You smiled nervously.
But you were so damn cool out there.
He mumbled into your neck. Your body quickly tensed up again at his words. You didn't know you could feel such joy. Yet hearing him praise you felt like the biggest honor had just been bestowed upon you. It's all because of the things you taught me. I couldn't have done it without you.
Will you shut up with that? What you did was all you. Your actions had nothing to do with me. So take the damn compliment.
It was then that you heard his words for what they truly were. He wasn't seeking acknowledgement. He merely wanted to praise you. For him to say that, you could tell how truly proud he was of you and your actions. You felt like your heart would burst from the intensity of this realization. Here you were thinking he was the cool one, but it seems he also thought the same of you. He pulled away from you, his hand resting on your shoulders, looking you up and down. He saw the cut on your cheek and gently brushed your skin, careful to stay away from the cut.
You idiot. Look at you. Why didn't you go straight to the hospital?
There was no way I could leave you here waiting for me. I just had to come to you.
So, should we head home?
He looked at you, referring to all of your wounds and tattered clothes. You clenched your hands together in front of your chest. No! Please. I've been looking forward to this so much. Can we still go? He smirked at you before moving his hand to hold yours.
Fine, no need to beg. Let's get you cleaned up first.
He effortlessly scooped you up from the ground, carrying you to the next destination. You nervously held on to his shirt. Wait! Bakugo, I can walk!
The hell you are! No way am I letting my date walk around barefoot after being so cool. You can fight it all you want. I'm not letting go.
You could swear by the end of this day you would run out of blood with how much it was shooting up to your face. How could you even say no to being spoiled by him? Luckily, you were still in the city, a shopping district of sorts. You quickly found a small clinic, the nurse of which used their quirk to clean and heal all your wounds. Once done, he scooped you right back up and took you to a local boutique, the owner of which saw your video, much to your surprise, and offered you a full makeover for free. They removed your tattered clothes and gave you a cute yet simple red sleeveless dress with a long black cardigan and dark flat sandals to help your achy feet. Afterwards, they took you upstairs to their salon, where they gave you light makeup and curled your hair. Once you made it back downstairs, Bakugo couldn't take his eyes off of you, as he watched every step you made back down to the lobby. You walked up to him and smiled, letting him take in the new look. What do you think? You twirled around to show him the full look.
That's okay, I guess.
He crossed his arms. You pouted, poking out your lip as you put your hands on your hips. He smirked, walking up to you and leaning down to your ear.
You look beautiful.
You smiled, looking away as you twiddled your thumbs. Thanks. And, I didn't get to say it before, but you look great in that outfit. Cool, even. His eyes widened slightly before he grabbed your hand, pulling you off to the door.
Come on, let's go already.
You smiled, seeing the slight blush on his face. You quickly thanked the staff before being pulled outside. It seemed that Bakugo had quite the itinerary planned. First, you both went to the aquarium. You leaned in near the glass, ogling all the fish, even going so far as to make bubbles around them, the fish swimming around and chasing them. You got an amused look from him as the surrounding families looked at the tank in awe, laughing and squealing at the fish. You ensured that everyone got their money's worth that day. After having way too much playtime at the aquarium, Bakugo then pulled you away to a nearby restaurant. It was a local place that was known for its spicy dishes. You should have known he'd pick a place like this, but he picked a perfect balance, as it had a variety of different items to choose from, so you could easily find something that you liked. After a fulfilling dinner and chat, he brought you over to the nearby amusement park, right next to the shopping district. It was bustling with people, with hundreds of different rides and booths filled with games.
Anything you want to try?
You turned around at his question enthusiastically, pointing at the ride behind you, jumping up and down excitedly. He scanned the ride, seeing it was one of the biggest ones here, with over 2 drops, several loops, twists, and turns. You looked at him amused as you saw his eyes light up, an eager grin on his face.
Hell yeah.
He grabbed your arm, pulling you over to the ride. Once you were all strapped in, the ride slowly ascended to the first drop. You eagerly held on to the bars, taking you a moment to notice as Bakugo extended a hand to you.
in case you get scared.
He smirked, attempting to tease you. You caught him off guard as you quickly snatched up his hand, lacing it with yours. I won't, but it gives me a reason to hold your hand. You grinned.
You idiot.
He looked away, but not before holding your hand tighter as your stomach plummeted, feeling the first drop of the roller coaster. The day felt so fulfilling. You spent hours at the amusement park, trying almost every ride there was, and getting on the larger ones several different times. You happily cradled the large teddy bear in your arms, one that Bakugo had rather aggressively won for you after knocking down 3 towers of milk bottles. If nothing else, you could give him credit for having one hell of a throwing arm. His technique definitely intimidated everyone who witnessed it, though. You internally laughed thinking about the memory, then stopped, noticing that Bakugo had stopped beside you.
Let's go here first before we head home.
You saw him point off to the distance. Ahead of you was a large Ferris wheel, lit up in the now darkened sky by multiple flashing lights, forming more patterns with each passing second. You smiled as he held his hand out to you. You took it and he grasped it gently, tugging you to the attraction. The gentleman at the ride held the door open for you as Bakugo led you by the hand, keeping you steady. You sat on opposite sides of each other, setting the large teddy bear beside you as the ride slowly took you up to its peak. You stared at your surroundings, your hands pressed against the window as you gleefully looked at the sights below. You could spot every place you had visited and every amazing memory you had there. Memories you would hold tight to. A night you could never forget. You glanced over toward Bakugo, who was leaning on the window beside him, his eyes glazed over. It was easy to mistake him for being disinterested, but you knew better. You could tell that whatever it was, he was deeply immersed in his thoughts. Without noticing, you found yourself staring at him, beautiful lights dancing around in his eyes, making them even more enticing than you thought possible. The day you had, although scary and frustrating at first, turned into a night as wonderful as this. It made you wonder, how did you both get here? How did you go from freshman students of UA who hardly talked to each other to now third years with a closer bond than you could ever imagine? You had always admired him from afar, way before he was helping you with your assignments. There was always something about him, and seeing him excel as not only a hero, but a person, made you truly value him. He felt immensely out of your league, though, so you never thought to share or pursue these feelings. He was someone you idolized. You were happy just to have him near. Never would you have ever dreamed that he would do something this wonderful for you. His eyes suddenly pointed toward you, sensing your gaze, as if almost prompting you to speak your innermost thoughts. But naturally, you hesitated.
You look like you have something to say.
He stated. More like a question. I don't know how to ask. You answered honestly.
Just speak your mind. I guess since I technically took a favor from you the other day, I can allow you one.
He spoke up, crossing his arms. Okay. You faced forward, pressing your hands into your legs nervously. Did you really want the answer to your questions? Things could considerably change once you got them, although a lot had changed already, if you were being honest. Your feelings and his seemed clear, although you hated the thought of mixed signals, so you wanted to make sure nothing could be misunderstood when it came to what you both wanted. You clutched the hem of your dress and looked at him with a newfound determination. Bakugo, what am I to you? You could see his eyes widen only slightly before he quickly regained his composure, but not before clicking his tongue and scratching the back of his head.
I forgot you're an idiot.
Wait, what? Not quite the response you were expecting. It was making you more nervous. He lifted his hand toward you, waving it in his direction to signal you to head that way.
Come here.
You swallowed the lump in your throat, the evidence of all your nervousness bundled up in one spot. You got up, walking over slowly and using the pole in the middle to balance yourself. Once you were close enough, he grabbed your wrist, pulling you down to sit right beside him. With the size of the bench, you couldn't avoid touching him. Your embarrassment quickly resurfaced as he stared you down.
Want to know why I did all this?
You slowly nodded your head. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees as he thought of his next words.
Ever since I met you and got stuck in the same class together, I was drawn to you.
You blinked, already surprised by this much, and trying not to feel instant jubilation from his statement. You stayed quiet and waited for him to continue.
Even without always talking to you, I could see what kind of person you were. How hard you worked. How strong you were. How you excelled at being a hero. I never really felt admiration for anyone except for All Might. And then I met you. I couldn't explain it. I never felt that way for anyone before. But I knew this would be my last year to find out what it meant. We never really talked that much. So once we graduated, I knew that would be the end of it. I would probably never see you.
You felt mystified. For you all to now be third years, he had been holding on to this for some time. Just like you.
I had thought of different ways to approach you, but nothing came to mind without me coming off as a creep. But then, you came to me.
You could swear you must have been dreaming. This couldn't be real. Not only was he telling you of these long-term hidden feelings, but that he was actually afraid. Afraid of not seeing you again. You, a person who you thought was in the very background of his thoughts. A nobody, completely unnoticed by him, the embodiment of an overachiever. All this time, you thought you were invisible, yet you were the pinnacle of his very thoughts.
I know you're wondering this too, so I'll tell you. Why I wouldn't let you ask me questions for so long.
You nodded again, unable to utter a single word, just letting him continue with every bit of information you had been dying to know.
I had it that way because I knew I wouldn't be able to answer your questions. I didn't know what it was that I was feeling. I wanted to spend that time with you to find out. But once I did, I wasn't prepared to answer your questions. I didn't know how you felt yet. But then damn Raccoon Eyes butted in. I guess it's 'cause of that I got my answer. After that, it was no holds barred. I was ready to tell you everything. But then your dumbass started avoiding me.
He snarled at the last part, snapping you out of your silence. I'm really sorry. I promise I'll make it up to you. I'll think of something.
You'll just come up with something stupid. Here's how you can make it up to me.
He grabbed your chin, gently catching you off guard as he leaned in, your noses barely touching.
Say it again.
He muttered. At first, you looked at him puzzled, but then your eyes widened in realization. You brought your hand up to his face, cradling it gently as you stared deeply into the bright red eyes, glistening with the glow of the nightlights. I really like you. You felt him lean in even closer to you, his breath now tickling your nose.
And I love you.
Your eyes widened as his lips crashed onto yours. Your eyes misted with tears you hadn't realized you were holding back, finally getting their release after hearing the words you never thought you would hear. If time could stop here, you would live the rest of your days in eternal bliss. You returned his kiss, sweet, slow and tender, but hungry with both desire and affection. His arms snaked around your back as you wrapped your arms around his neck, pulling him in and holding him tight. You were happy, oh so happy, and from the way he held you, you could tell he was too. You could hear a low boom nearby, and you felt him pull away from you slowly. His eyes still danced with desire, but he took his hand to your chin once more, slightly tilting it to the window, facing the opposite direction. You looked out, but didn't see anything but the attractions below that you had already seen. You looked back at him puzzled, but he merely turned you back to face the window, his head resting in the crook of your neck as he looked on with you.
Don't look away.
he whispered, sending chills up your spine. You looked, hearing a loud whistling sound, before looking up to a burst of color in the sky. He smiled, hearing your gasp of both surprise and excitement as he wrapped his arms back around you. Bright lights of color popped into the sky of all different hues. The night sky lit up with explosive flowers throughout its dark canvas. This was all too perfect. You smiled, wiping away the now dry tears on your skin. You felt him leave small kisses on your neck as he held you closer.
To answer your question, you're mine.
You smiled, leaning into him as more tears threatened to fall. You never could have dreamed that he felt for you the way he did, and for so long, just like you had. You never thought your feelings would be returned. You never thought you would be here right now in his arms. But all of that was irrelevant, because now you would never let go.